Hey guys, welcome to the CodeNom channel where we learn out loud. Main thing that we're going to do today is we're going to learn how to build an application and test it in Python. Today's focus is going to be all around that. It's going to be a short video, but it's going to sort of set the tone for all the other things we'll do. So when you're building an application, you normally have a directory for it, and you have like a folder for tests and things like that. And depending on if you're making a module or a library, you would actually make a folder for that application. In this case, we're not going to do that, but it is something that we will do down the line as we make more complex applications. So the very first thing I need to do is, like I said, make a directory. So it's an empty directory, and I gotta do mkdir. I'm gonna say my hello world, and what I want to do is basically write a simple application that tests hello world. Cool. So what I did right now is I've created several files, and you'll see that there's the test.py file, which is empty, and then I created two other files, one for testing my hello world and another one called dunder init, and being able to access modules. So I added the dunder init in particular so I can access the module one level below. In this case, it's our app.py file. Without it, I would actually have to put the exact extract path to it. It's not something you have to worry about now, but in the future, these are things you have to keep in mind. Init files or initialization files become a lot more complex when you start dealing with much larger applications and much larger frameworks and tools. But for now, this is where the focus is. As for the Python language, as for the Python version we're going to be using, it's going to be Python 3.8. Even though it says Python 2, we're going to be using Python 3.8, and I'll show you what I mean when I do that. So let's start off with the simple stuff. Let's actually write our tests. So I'm going to open up Vim. Most people will use like VS Code, or they'll use something else. Just use whatever editor you're personally comfortable with. And for me, it just so happens to be Vim. Mainly because there's a lot of things I can do with it. So what should happen is if this test gets run, it should fail because I haven't created this hello function that you see here. I've created the file, so I've created the file or the module, but I haven't created the file itself. So we have to keep that in mind. So in order to be able to run this function or any of the tests that belong to this test module, we need to sort of make it executable, and it will basically execute this entire series of tests, anything that's inside of this file. And that's because of this main function here, because this says that main is sort of like the reference in which the name of the file itself is the main file or the main object that I'm reading through. So simply, okay, you exist, this is the test I need to run. And that's pretty much it. So I would normally save and quit, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use one of Vim's nice capabilities, and that's splitting the screen. And you can do that with Control Window and V, or you can do colon V split or whatever. But I just do the shortcuts, and it ran but didn't execute. Oh, because I didn't explicitly name the file. So it's looking and it's like, I don't know what you want me to run. Cool. And I got an error. It was like, there's no attribute hello on app. Well, let's solve that issue. So we're gonna do the same thing here. So I'm gonna actually open up Vim inside my terminal, which is inside of Vim, just because it's kind of fun. And I can go back out and exit it and all that fun stuff, and I'm only going to do one thing anyway. If I wanted to, I can save and quit this because this all looks correct, and I can confirm that it's correct by doing something simple like Python. So I can do Python 3.8 -i, which is interactive mode. And I can actually test my app.py file, right? Because now I can go hello, and it will return that data. So I know that my function returns data at the least. So now I can go exit. Most people just hit Control D, and it's a shortcut to exiting it. And now I want to test this. So we had this test before. Last time it failed. So hopefully this time when we run it, it will pass. Awesome. And we ran the test, and oops, I made a mistake. Instead of using equals, because equals is for multiple parameters and I only have one, it should be equal. So that there was a mistake there, right? So I have to do X and let's see if we can run this again without any errors. All right, it says one test ran, but that's a bit, sparse. It's not very verbose. So in unit tests in particular, you can actually run verbose, very verbose, and very, 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 very verbose. Which is very, very useful, especially when you have tests on functions that have a series of other functions in them, or classes, and you're testing a whole bunch of things and you don't know what is breaking and things like that. When you get runtime errors, things like that, it's a whole other beast. So we have this, and it gives me some information, some extra information, and I'll highlight it for you so you can see. One, it's letting me know the module that it's running, which is the Hello World module, right? So test Hello World is the function, and then it's letting me know where this is, and also it's telling me, okay, this also will test that Hello World function. So test that Hello function. And it's interesting because it takes the doc string and it's reading the very first line, if you notice. So now I have a lot of clarity. I know what test was run. I know which test was run, the name of that test, and I also know what class it belongs to. So that's the kind of format and style you want to present whenever you're doing any coding. This is sort of like what you want to do. This is essentially the core element of it. Now I could have done something a little more detailed on this end, where I say change word, and I'll say from app import since I know I'm only running one function, I can do this. And so now I've saved this, and I can run this same command again, and it'll still pass. It's just that now I don't have it calling anything else or importing anything else but that one function. And that's good because for clarity and readability. So you want to keep these things in mind. How can you make it more easy for the next developer to read, or for yourself to read down the line? So some of these steps that you noticed that I took were I used some doc strings to describe what I'm expecting from each function. I just gave a very, very general description for my class. And instead of just importing the module, I imported the function from the module. And you'll see that more often than not, depending on how many functions are available. Because in that case, I may just import the app if I have like 1,000 functions. Or maybe I have a class and I just need to import a series of class objects. So these are the things we have to keep in mind. These are the things you want to keep in mind. And for such a simple program, there were several steps that we went through to make sure that we were using the best possible approach, you could say. So this is what you would do in a professional environment. Now, I know this is a very, very small application, a very simplified application, but we're going to use this approach in future approaches down the line, because what I'm going to do next or in the future is a lot more things around data structures and algorithms. And so I want you guys to get real comfortable with seeing this constantly, get used to seeing it over and over and over again. The other thing that I haven't talked about that I will also start doing is adding doc strings. Not doc strings, is adding a README file. And if you don't know what a README file is, I'm going to do one right now so that you get a sort of good idea of what that looks like. So we're going to do touch README. Alright. Now, if you notice, it's .md, which is Markdown. And so whenever you're writing any project, whenever you're building any project, it is so important to have a README file for not only yourself in the future, but for clarity on what the project was, how it works, and the steps to testing it. So a couple of things. Discover, run the explicit path, run the test module name. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So the module name is not this. It'd be score test underscore hello. So now, if I wanted to make sure that this runs as expected, I can do test, test. This is the module name. World. WRLD. And bam, one test ran. So now we have what is basically a happy test. We have a file that we've created that tells people how to use the function or how to use our application. And those are sort of like the key things you want to keep in mind. Every application that you write should always have these things. It should have a directory for its tests. It should have a file for or README describing how to use the application. In this particular case, it's so small that I decided just like, hey, you can run it in this interactive mode, and it runs. We could have also done something like this where we make the application executable. So we could make app executable, and we could do something like, well, we're in the Python environment, right? So we don't even have to do this. We can actually do this. We can just say, get rid of all this. You're in the environment now, and in the environment, I have to import app, and then that's it. And then I can, and then from app, or I would actually do this. I would do from app import. This would be more of an appropriate way. From app import hello. So now I can run hello without issue. So now I have that. That's clear. It's concise. It tells me that this is how I would run the application. This is exactly how you should do it. Actually, this is clear. This is concise, and you're not using any shortcuts to get there. And you're not using any like flags or anything like that. So ideally, this is your approach. This is what you would do in the real world. So with that in mind, let's keep learning out loud, and looking forward to showing you guys a few other really cool things. Yeah, learning out loud.